So have you noticed yet that usually I start with a question? Right? Because sometimes people look to me for answers. And sometimes I think it's a better question that we need. Like sometimes we just ask the wrong question. And if you ask the wrong question, oftentimes you get the wrong answer. And I think as we get better at kind of challenging ourselves to ask better questions, I think the spiritual process kind of unfolds in front of us, sometimes all by itself. But today I've got a scripture for you, and that's where I want to start. Matthew 6:33. But seek ye first his kingdom and its righteousness, and all these things shall be yours as well. Seek ye first this kingdom, his righteousness, and all these things will be yours as well. So my question for you today is, what does that mean to you? You know I had to have a question. It just wasn't first. Right? So what does that mean to you? If you seek the kingdom of heaven first, if you seek the righteousness of God first, what does that mean that you get everything in return? How many of you have lived your life that way? Most of us live the opposite direction, right? We seek the things of the world first, and then after we get everything we need, where our house is pretty and everything's taken care of, then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, where's God? Right? So many of us have been doing this kind of backwards. You know, we get everything in order out here in the three-dimensional world, and then it's, oh, by the way, time's getting short, tick, tick, tick. I better check to see how my relationship with God's going. And what if the process is actually the opposite? But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and then you get it all. You know, the study of Jesus has always intrigued me. And the study of Jesus is kind of challenging. The first recorded words that were written down approximately 100 years after he passed. The questions I've asked myself over and over again is it true? How many of you have ever asked yourself that question? Is it true? And I know that we're supposed to believe it's all true, right? But the thing that has struck me is always the miracles. And I've always been curious about wanting to understand Jesus' relationship with life. Because in my world, in my thinking, in my experience, I want to know how, if it happened, if it did happen, how did it happen? Because I want to know. I want to be able to replicate that. Anybody ever felt like that? That you wanted to know how he did what he did, because if he did what he did, I want to be able to do what he did. So I become a student. And I wanted to learn and understand his relationship with life, because I believe that his relationship with life was not the ordinary relationship with life. So he gave hints, he gave clues, he taught us. And sometimes when somebody's teaching you something, you want to put it in the old basket. You know, you want to understand it the way you understand it. And sometimes what he's saying to us doesn't fit in our current understanding. So sometimes we have to be willing to actually throw things out of our basket. We have to unlearn. We have to let go of those things that no longer serve us. Has everybody had a belief that you picked up along in life and you realized at some point in your life, that's just weird? Right? You've been holding on to this belief. You've been believing it's true. You've been hoping it's true. And then you get to a point in your own evolution where you realize, that's just weird. I don't know where I learned that. My fifth grade friend or whatever. And so what was Jesus' relationship with life? And why was it so important to him that we seek the kingdom and the righteousness of God first and foremost? And the promise that if we seek the kingdom first and the righteousness of God first, not only do we get that, but we get everything else. we get everything else. This month we've been studying affirmative prayer, and affirmative prayer is the basis of Unity's understanding of prayer. Affirmative prayer is the highest form of prayer as we understand it, and it's not about begging or beseeching God, but affirming that God is in us and within us, and with God all things are possible. And in this book that we've been using as the basis, Discovering Your Divinity, in Unity has been a process of redefining the steps. So we've been bringing these new steps, and they're not too different, but they are a little different than the way that we've defined it for the last 100 or so years. And the first step in Unity's understanding of affirmative prayer is the step of I open. And we began the first Sunday in this process with I open. And I want you to say that with me. I open. I open. And I want you to see how many times in your life have we been shut down or closed to possibilities simply because this is the way it's supposed to be. And the moment we open our mind, we open our heart, we open our experience, we open our life expectancy, we just open to a greater possibility. The moment we open, the amount of possibilities increases infinitely. And we can live our whole life from such a closed place. And have you noticed it's always easier to see the closedness of another than it is to see the closedness of yourself? Does everybody have a family member that you know is just shut down? And you think, I wish they could just open up and listen to all the wisdom I have within me. Because if they would just open up, I could just bless them. And they're so shut down. Poor little things, right? Poor little things. I open. Together? I open. And then the second week we talked about I recognize. And it's I recognize God. But in a very different way. I recognize God in me. You know, sometimes we go to a church or a temple or a synagogue, or we go to the mountaintop or we go to the beach, and we recognize God. We see the experience of God. We feel the experience of God. And sometimes our experience of God is external. And in this second step, we move our awareness from an external experience of God into an internal experience of God. That God is within us. Yeah. It changes everything. When God moves from being an external force in your life to an internal presence and power, it changes everything. And many of us were taught to pray to an external God. And if we prayed loud enough and often enough, because God is getting old and hard of hearing, God will hear our prayers and grant us our humble requests. And the third step we focused on last week, and it was integrate. And for me, this is the hardest one. Because in this one, not only do we know that God is within us, but we are in the process of becoming more and more godlike. When Jesus said the Father and I are one, he was revealing his relationship with the divine and inviting us to step into that relationship where we are knowing our oneness with God. We bring our consciousness up to a level of God consciousness, and we actually experience the divine within ourselves. And then today we move into the realization. I realize that I am one with the one. I realize that I have the power of God moving through me. And there's three things that open up for us when we realize that we are one with God. And it's I can, I have, I know. Will you say that with me? I can, I have, I know. One more time. I can, I have, I know. Now, our ego loves these statements. Right? Because how many times have we said, I can, right? And our ego gets so excited. I can. I have. I know. Right? And our ego tells us, yes, you do, Tiger, go. Right? And it's such an ego statement, right? I can, I have, I know. And we never have an experience of the divine, but we have a sense of our own superiority. And what if today the realization is I can because God is within me, God is expressing through me. I have because God is my source, and I know because the divine is revealing its way through me. From Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can. But not because of your personal will, not because of your ego, not even because of your great desires, but because the activity of God in you allows all things to be possible through you. And I have, Luke 12:32, the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. It's the Father's good pleasure to give you everything. I can, I have, and I know. That one of the scriptures I read for you last week is, I know, for now you see in the glass dimly, but one day you will see face to face. I know in part, but then I shall know fully. I shall know fully. How many of us have ever experienced self-doubt? Now, what is self-doubt about, right? Self-doubt is a belief that there's something not quite right with us, or not quite adequate enough, or quite big enough for whatever life is bringing to us. And so we move into a level of self-doubt, and when we're in the experience of self-doubt, is that a spiritual experience? No, because we're actually denying who we are. We're denying that we are sons and daughters of the Most High. We're denying that with God all things are possible. And self-doubt robs us of the life that God offers us. It robs us of blessing and opportunities and love and joy because of the smallness of our ego. And what if today we are willing to say, with God, I can, I have, I know. Together, with God, I can, I have, I know. Like we're excited. With God, I can, I have, I know. One more time. With God, I can, I have, I know. 2 weeks ago, the internet was out in the minister's offices. You know, there was a time when I used to do ministry without internet. Like, I am so old, right, that I actually remember doing ministry without the internet. Now you take the internet with me and it's like, I'll just go garden. Right? So I went and used Kathy's office, and in Kathy's office, lovely office, Kathy's office has this banner. Let's shoot it up there, will you? Has this banner, this sign that says gratitude. The secret of having it all is knowing that you already have it. Isn't that great? The secret of having it all is knowing you already have it. Let's say that together. The secret in having it all is knowing that you already have it. Now, is that spiritually true? It is spiritually true. Lao Tzu said this. Now, Lao Tzu, is the semi-legendary Chinese philosopher, the author of the Tao Te Ching, one of the founders of Taoism, said this: be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there's nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. Can I read that one more time? Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there's nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. See, we were created out of the infinite goodness of God. But most of us were raised in an environment where we had a strong belief that there wasn't enough. And we have been trained to see a world where there's not enough. And so when we look at the world around us, we see evidence that there's not enough. But would God create a universe where there was lack anywhere? How could an infinite God create a universe of lack? It doesn't make sense, right? How could you create something that's unlike yourself? So all around us is this abundance of God. And Jesus taught us this. In John 4:35, he said, do not they say, there are yet 4 months, then comes the harvest? I tell you, lift up your eyes and see how the fields are already white for harvest. Like, he's saying, look, You know that it's 4 months to the harvest. You know that it's 4 months, that it's not time to harvest yet. And yet, lift up your eyes. Lift up your eyes to the spiritual possibilities. Lift up your eyes to the infinite experience of God and see that the fields are already white for harvest. I think what Jesus was saying, that there's a physical reality and there's a spiritual reality. And this spiritual reality seems to be dominant. And when we see it, the spiritual point of view, the physical reality actually aligns with the spiritual reality. I want you to hear me say this again. When we see the spiritual reality, the physical reality tends to align with that spiritual reality. But if we just see the physical reality, nothing changes. If you just see the limitations, what you see is more and more what? Limitations. If you see the infinite abundance of God all around you, what tends to happen is that physical reality transforms and you begin to see the abundance of God all around you. And the question for us all in this 4-step in prayer is realization. What are you seeing? Are you seeing lack and limitation? Are you seeing the world that you don't want? Or are you seeing the glory of God, and in seeing the glory of God, calling the physical manifestation to that level of experience and actually demonstrating the glory of God? Jesus walked into situation after situation that looked limited. And his vision on the infiniteness of God created a transformation fairly quickly. And in those moments, that transformation was actually what we call a miracle. I realize I can, I have, I know. Together, I can, I have, I know. How would your life be different if in every moment you tapped into that infinite reservoir of God's good, no matter what the need, no matter what the situation, no matter what the experience was, and you affirmed for yourself and all those around you, I can, I have, I know. It would change many of our lives. Many of our lives are just settling for what is. And instead of reaching into the infinite reservoir of God's good and saying, I can, I have, I know. Together, I can, I have, I know. Do you know who Russell Cornwell is? He was an American Baptist minister, orator, philanthropist, author, attorney, writer. He was the first president and founder of Temple University in Philadelphia. He wrote this pamphlet. Actually, it was a lecture that he gave. Have you ever heard it? It's called Acres of Diamonds. And Acres of Diamonds is this little pamphlet that was written in the early 1900s. And it became so popular. And he was asked to speak all over the world, the same lecture. I thought, what a racket. I mean, I meant that with all the love in my heart, right? But if you let me do one talk that I could do all over the world, then all I had to do was the audience changed and my talk remained the same, I'd be a lot more fun on Saturdays. I'm telling you right now. Right? I would. So he did this talk. He wrote this talk called Acres of Diamonds. And the premise of Acres of Diamonds is this story about a Persian farmer, Ali Lafid, who sells his farm in search of diamonds. And he wants to sell the family farm because he's committed to finding diamonds. He's committed to being a very wealthy man. So he sells the family farm, and he goes far and wide, all over the world, endures hardships and poverty, and eventually he discovers that the family that he sold his farm to discovered the richest diamond mine in the world. How happy was he? Right? How happy was he, right? And the whole premise is this in the story, that the moral of the story is that we had it all along. And he uses experience after experience. And when you're in the experience of lack, you cannot believe that the greatest diamond mine the world has ever known is actually underneath your wheat field. Because all you got is darn wheat. Right? And wheat is nice, but it's not a diamond mine. And many of us, our souls are hungry for a greater life. We are hungry for a greater life. And we always think that that greater life is out there. And what if whatever you desire, whatever you're seeking, whatever you want, whatever you need has already been placed within you by a loving, active, abundant God, and it's within you, and you just have to actually learn to look within. Seek ye first the kingdom and its righteousness, and all things will be yours as well. I mean, that's a huge statement. How can going within actually provide all that? And yet, when we look at the story of the Wizard of Oz, how many of you remember the Wizard of Oz? And if you haven't seen The Wizard of Oz, spoiler alert, I'm going to give you the whole press of the matter, right? The moral of the story, when she's laying in bed after all that she's gone through, what does she say? I had it all along. I had it all along. Wouldn't that be a crack up? On your last day, on your last breath, on your last moment, for your eyes to open and you see that you had it all along, even though you've been working so hard, here and there, going everywhere, searching for what you want, wanting what you want, thinking it's got to be outside of you, to know that it was within you the whole time and you didn't believe it. I realize, I can, I have, I know. Together, I realize, I can, I have, I know. So what is it that you want? What is the desire that is moving your life forward? Can you imagine just for a moment that it's not outside you? That wherever God has placed you, wherever you are, right there is your source of everything that you want and need. And it would change us if we weren't always looking at the greener pastures outside of ourselves and digging deep into the pasture that God has placed us. Like today, what do you really want? What is it that you seek? Do you want a healing? Do you want a blessing? What is it? And would you be willing today to not look outside yourself, but to go deeper within yourself and realize that whatever you seek, I can, I have, I know. Together, I can, I have, I know. One more time. I can, I have, I know. Pray with me, will you? And I invite you to open your mind, your heart, your soul to the activity of God that's within you. That there's a holy presence within each and every one of us. And that holy presence invites us to explore it more deeply, to know the glory of God within ourselves, and discover that we have within us everything that we're looking for. That there is wisdom and abundance and joy and love so abundant within each and every one of us. I can, I have, I know. And so we claim that today. We affirm that. We rejoice and we give thanks for that. I have, I can, I know. In the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen.